What's going on, y'all? This is your girl, Brie Undeniably, checking in for another episode of my new speaker series, Deep Conversations with Dope Individuals, where we're discussing development, decision-making, and dedicating yourself to purpose. As always, you all know I'm about to speak to a super dope individual, someone who I'm really excited to have on the show. But first, I like to give my shout outs right at the beginning. If you are watching this on YouTube or listening on whatever podcast streaming source you use, you're going to hear the crystal clear audio and the crystal clear video. Both of those thanks to Gotham Podcast Studios. So they are providing the space and all of the engineering for me and this podcast. So shout out to Gotham. Also, shout out to MC Kicks. Though I'm not wearing any MC merch right now, they are always hooking it up, sponsoring me with all of their new products. So if you have not checked out MC Kicks, you can head to their website or to their social profiles at EMCEEKICKS. And their website is just that.com. And finally, when you're doing something for yourself, trying to build it up, you got to pump yourself up too. So if y'all have not checked out my website, you can go there. That's BrieUndeniably.com. And there you're going to find all of the services, everything I'm doing outside of the podcast, but also you're going to find some really cool merch. So though I am not wearing anything, I do have my Dope Individual backpack with me. So if you want a Dope Individual backpack or any other Dope Individual items, you can get those on the website, as well as all of my I Am Possible gear. All right, so we're kicking into it now. That is all the shout outs I have. My guest today is Tom Glaser. Tom, welcome to the show.
Bree, thanks for having me.
It's so great to
Gosh,
have you here.
the
Yeah.
dope thing. I hope I can live up to the hype there. Gosh.
It's, you know what, you absolutely can, and that's why we chat beforehand. I make sure that you are a dope individual
Oh, you've
coming
seen me.
on.
I'm already dope. Okay.
Dope, you know, if for those listening, if you have not seen that, my acronym for dope is someone who is driving on purpose every day. So that is my own spin on what a dope individual is, and those are for sure the individuals that I bring on this podcast. Tom, I know that you are a purpose-driven individual.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that. On that definition, I guess I qualify.
100%. Well, let me give you the introduction that you deserve, and we'll get to know you a little bit more.
Sounds good.
All right. So, Tom Glaser, also known as the senior happiness superhero. I love that, by the way. That's amazing. Is a life coach, psychologist, and speaker with over 35 years of experience. Whether counseling, teaching, or appearing in the media, his passion for helping people live their best lives flows through. A dog lover, gardener, and yoga teacher, he and his husband are based in Minneapolis, but spend as much time as possible in the Southern California desert. Tom, thank you again for being here. How are you doing today?
It's a pleasure. I'm great. Yeah, especially now that I'm talking with you.
Awesome. I feel the same. This is for sure always the best part of my day. I mean, how cool that I really just get to talk to cool people. It's absolutely amazing.
Totally.
So, you know, this is no surprise to you, but the way that I always start with my guests really is what I also do as a counselor, which is I always let my listeners know in the counseling community, we like to meet our clients where they're at. And it's the same with my guests. So I like to meet my guests where they're at so the listeners can understand a little bit more about who we're speaking with. So let us know a little bit more about yourself there.
Well, first, can I say I totally resonate with what you're saying about your passion for doing these podcasts, because that's what I experienced when I began to write my book, Full Heart Living, Conversations with the Happiest People I Know. So just by the subtitle there, right? Conversations with the Happiest People I Know. That's what I experienced, is that joy of just being with really happy people and doing a deep dive into what makes them tick, and then sharing that with other people. Yeah, you're right. That is a huge passion of mine, and it does absolutely drive me.
I can't wait to talk about your book as well. I mean, we're definitely going to dive into it, but how awesome. Full Heart Living. Like the title, I mean, man, we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but that makes me want to dive. Yeah. That makes me want to dive right in.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah,
of course.
I learned that happier people live with their full hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that, of course, is where the title comes from. So what does that mean? Happy people aren't just happy all the time. Happier people embrace all of life. Sometimes we're not so happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And happier people don't try to avoid that or shove it down or distract themselves from it. When that's true, they open up to it and
Yes.
go with it.
Yes.
And that contributes in so many ways to being happier.
I love just even, just starting to push into that, like that it's such a unique way to frame happiness as well. I love that it's not rainbows and butterflies. There's more
Mm-mm.
to what is the depth of happiness.
Not just Pollyanna, right?
Yes.
Always looking at the bright side, always having a positive outlook. When we have, everyone has days that don't go so well
Mm-hmm.
or worse. And
Mm-hmm.
that actually is how I got into all this,
Okay.
Bree. I had so for 7 years I lived my dream job. I had a phenomenal job that I absolutely adored, where I got to meet with individuals and do the individual counseling and psychotherapy that I love,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to teach on subjects that I love, and not just kind of standard academic, but I got to teach in really creative ways and of all kinds of wellness and health promotion, things that I'm also passionate about, to a population that I adored. And then one day there was a new hire who came on our team, um, and it was a very small team, and I was assigned regularly to create some of these programs with this person, and this person just hated the ground I walked on. So we
Mm.
were what's the phrase, oil and water.
Oh,
I tried everything I could to make this relationship work. Everything I could think of. I really back bends and going out of my way and consulting with all the wise people I know to help me, and nothing worked. And um, my dream became a nightmare. So I was going to
man.
retire at this job, and I used to wake up, not, loving to, couldn't wait to get into work. And then I still had half of the job that was fun, but the other half was so not fun. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
it was so not fun that I was becoming depressed. And one day I'll never forget, my husband. Well, then we were partners. This marriage came along. Legal gay marriage came along after that. But at
We're
breakfast,
so happy to hear that as well. Always
yeah, shout out,
making
yeah.
making the world a more beautiful and inclusive place.
Absolutely. I'm telling him about the latest escapade with this challenging coworker, and he was like, Greg, my husband was like, Tom, this is not worth it.
Hmm.
You are miserable. And I love that. So that mirror that a loved one can provide,
Right.
really, that moment really woke me up. Miserable? I'm like, I'm miserable, but and I was making him miserable. Now he didn't say that. He was kind enough to not say that, but that was part of it. He was
Yeah.
like fatigued of hearing all these stories.
Man,
And
that's tough too. Like you said, that mirror from a loved
mhm,
one, for
mhm,
because they can offer you that transparency, and we'll see you externally where we don't get to really experience ourselves externally other than in the mirror. But, they
that's
see,
the
yeah,
thing. That's the
exactly.
thing. We have to be in relationship to see ourselves, right?
Mhm.
That's the only way we can
Yes.
truly, deeply see ourselves. So there are people who say, shouldn't I just be able to have insights on my own? And sometimes when that can happen, great. Sometimes that happens. We have epiphanies on our own. And so often it comes from being in connection, right?
Absolutely.
That's when we really see ourselves. We know who we are, and we get to know others by knowing ourselves, right? It's
Mhm.
this feedback loop that just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it is, I'll come back to this later, but connection is by far the standout lesson that I learned in the interviews and the research that I did for my book, Bree. It's all about connection. So again, that's just foreshadowing.
Yes.
We're gonna come back to that.
We'll get there.
Yeah, totally. So I So I'm depressed and I realize I need to leave my dream job, which it took me a long time. It's not like overnight where
Right.
at breakfast and Greg says you're miserable, you got to get out of there. It still took me a long time because my very identity was wrapped up in this job. I loved my job. As I said, I was committed. I was there for well, by now it was 9 or 10 years. I was going to stay. I was going to retire at this job that I absolutely adored, but I had to go through my grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
And meantime, I was starting to study acting a little bit because I was so down. I was like, I want to get back into one of my prior loves of my life. So I was studying with an on-camera acting coach, and Bill Cooper is his name. And I'm no while I'm doing that, I'm noticing. So I'm depressed, and I'm noticing really happy people, Brie, all around me, from my hair stylist to the woman who offered office next door to me to this
Mm-hmm.
person I was in a play with, and I'm just like observing what are they doing that I'm not doing. I want to be happier. And then I got braver and I started asking them questions. Well, it just snowballed into this video project. So I'm studying with an on-camera acting coach, and I go, oh, I could make some mini documentaries myself. I can interview these people and find out what makes them happier. And on the first day of filming, Bree, it's that moment that we were talking about earlier. So I'm sitting there, really diving deep on camera with these people, and learning about what they do that other people maybe don't do as much of. And I'm having the best day of my life. It's one of the best days of my. I'm so happy. And on break from filming, at one point, I'm on the back porch. We filmed in my house that first day, and I had known for years, Bree, that I would write a book, but I didn't know for a long time what the book was going to be about. And here's one of those epiphanies that came to me when I was alone. I go, oh, this is what I could write a book about because I love this. I could do this day in and day out. So that's the genesis of the book. We're filming these mini
Yes.
documentaries, and it snowballed into a book.
Okay. All right. So that was that moment was so a couple questions. I want to
Yes.
just about the crossover. Did you start studying with this on camera coach prior to leaving this job that was
Yes.
causing you all? Okay, so there was that sort of place of crossover
Correct.
between those two things. And then once you had the sort of epiphany moment or the aha moment for the book, is that sort of what really pushed everything else into motion?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, very
Definitely. Not that it's
interesting.
all smooth sailing from there, of
Right.
course not. Right?
It never is. we're always we're always sailing with some. I've never crazy
Uh,
winds and choppy waters,
yeah,
but
uncharted waters.
exactly,
Yeah. Writing a book is a huge thing, right? It's
absolutely.
blood, sweat, and tears.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad I did it. Really helpful. And it was one of the hardest things, of course, that I've ever done.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so before we really push into the book, I have a couple questions about this job that you were trying to phase out of because
Yeah.
I want to I sort of want to stay in that place for a few more minutes where things were just up in the air for you. You were feeling depressed. You were
Yeah.
let's kind of just push in to all of that really quick because I know so many listeners are could be there or could be sort of ruminating somewhere around there, and I know that learning from others' experiences can always provide that value. So what were you going through, or I guess like what were daily, what were the sort of the questions that you were asking yourselves or the yourself or the things that you were doing to try to move forward? Like what was that sort of like itching point, I guess? What was the discomfort there really, and how are you working to push out of it?
First of all, can I tell you, just you're asking this question, it's fascinating. I'm noticing in my body, I get
Mm.
heavier. My shoulders kind of droop
Wow.
down. My chin wants to go more toward my chest. Like I'm feeling that sadness
Wow.
come back into my body just as you pause for a minute and say, yeah, let's just kind of
Mm-hmm. Also,
stay there for a minute.
I was going to say, please, I always want to make sure we stay within your comfort zone too.
Oh no, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
I appreciate
It's
the
cool.
transparency. I think that's so interesting and unique, and really that it's almost that visceral experience, that body experience you can really feel that with emotional pain that's relived
Correct.
or re-experienced.
Correct. Correct.
Wow.
So that's part of answering your question. That's what
Yeah.
was going on in my body, right? I'm like
Wow.
moving more slowly through the world.
Wow.
I'm not
Okay.
as happy. I'm not as cheerful. I'm not smiling as much. Here's a key thing that I wasn't doing. I was not singing, Brie.
Hmm.
Like I wasn't singing along to the radio like I used to do, like that. And one day, after I started to feel better, I noticed I'm singing along with the radio again. I'm waking up. I'm coming back alive. That's a key
You,
indicator right there.
I am not kidding. This doesn't happen all the time, but I really just got a chill, and I think it's because you just shared one of the most humanly human things that we could possibly do that we don't realize is so intertwined to
Mm.
our being is
Yeah.
singing, or feeling music or being with art in some way, but the
Yeah.
singing specifically, I think the majority of us in this world sing along to the things in some way, whether it's in our heads or out loud,
Right.
to the things that we like to hear. So that is
Exactly.
so unique and interesting that you said you noticed you stopped singing because typically you wouldn't anywhere, whether you're going to get, any type of diagnosis anywhere, the doctor's not going to say, have you stopped singing?
Right.
It's just
Yes.
not something that we think of. So I love that you just put that out there because it's so human and it's so connected to so many of us.
Yeah. And
Wow.
it's the both and. It's we sing when we're happy, and singing helps us be happier.
Yeah.
Both, like both.
To feel
Both are true. Yeah.
singing helps us to feel, and
Yes.
I think a lot of times in those moments of depression or despair, it's almost like that numbness, maybe we don't want to feel anything at that. So
Exactly.
you might turn off your voice unknowingly because singing makes you feel, and feeling is just too hard no matter what type of feeling it is.
Exactly, Brie. And that,
Mm,
again, that's why that title, Full Heart Living,
yes.
because happier people lean in even in those harder times.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that
Oh yeah.
specific piece. I think, it's like you answered the question in that one moment
Hmm.
there
Yes.
that you had stopped singing. So one day you said you started singing again.
Yes. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And that was a like a turnkey moment for you.
Yes. Yes. And
Wow.
look how both you and I are smiling just as we recount that exact thing. That's that
Mhm.
resonance, even though, right, we're hundreds of miles apart. This is over video,
Mhm.
but we're sharing a moment here. And
Yes.
we both get it, and it's in our bodies and it shows on our face. And I just wanted to highlight that because, again, this is what I saw and what I found then from doing my book is that it's that kind of connection that happier people do a lot of,
Yes.
connecting with other people. And both, may I point out too, is we're connecting with each other, you and me, and
Mhm.
hopefully the listener or the viewer is connecting with this as well. Um, but we also connect with ourselves in that moment.
Mhm.
It's both. So we're getting to what I learned. Is it okay if I dive into
Please, it's time to dive. Let's go there. Remember, we're sailing on the choppy. Dive
Exactly,
into these uncharted
exactly.
waters.
So here's what I found in interviewing the happiest people in my own personal life. And let me just say quick, I'll take a quick aside here. I decided to make it uh, uh, people I personally know,
Okay.
not people, not famous people, not people um, who I didn't, who are at all distant to me, because I wanted to make the point that we all know happier people.
Mm,
It, it's not just celebrities, for
right.
instance, or rich people.
Right.
If you look, happier people are all around us. So anyhow, what I learned is happy people connect really deeply with other people,
Okay.
with themselves
Yes.
and their passion. So I'll go a little bit more into each one, and then
Please.
I'll bring you the kind of the holy grail, because there's a bit of a fourth twist into all this. So
Great.
connecting with other people, what does that mean? Happier people have a tribe. They have people who they love and who adore them back, and they spend a lot of time together. It doesn't have to mean a primary romantic relationship. Of course not. No, 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 no. Aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, family of what's that called? Choice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Friends, co-workers.
Yes.
It could be the person you see every day at the bus stop that you have that little bit of connect, even if you don't know their name, but you see them 5 days a week, and you have that moment where you just look at each other, right? That can be a piece of feeling really connected to other people. Connection to oneself, what does that mean? Part of that is mindfulness. Happier
Yes.
people
Okay.
are in the present moment. They're not missing out on what's happening in the here and now by worrying as much about the future or perseverating, ruminating about things that happened in the past. They're open and available for what's right now. They also know who they are, and they honor their own rhythms and their own needs, and they attend to those. Um, Connection with passion. What does that mean? They do things that they love. And this is, of course, a great tie into your work.
Yes.
Uh, Passions are things, are activities that we enjoy just for the sake of doing them. And often, when we do them, we lose all sense of time. We get into that flow state,
Mm-hmm.
where we're just kind of one with the activity, and hours might pass, and we don't even realize that that much time has passed because we're so deeply engaged. So here's that fourth thing that I mentioned. So when you can do any or all or some of those in the service of other people, Brie,
And the yes. Oh,
then look out,
absolutely.
look out, look out. Like that just kind of puts it all on steroids.
Yes. It really does. The amplification of all of those things
Right.
put to service with other people is a force to be reckoned with.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
It actually, I think I might have mentioned this to you also, for those who are listening. My definition of purpose has been passion plus people. So very similar to what you're saying.
Mm,
And something interesting that I actually learned and sort of reworked the definition with a prior guest that I've had on, because he told me that for in his life, passion was difficult for him to find, and he realized that there might not be just one thing or sort of this dedicated piece of passion, but it could be multiple things depending on which way you lean into. And I thought that that was really interesting. And I was like, there might be more, there certainly are more people who might not know exactly what their dedicated passion is, or if they might have 10 of them and they don't know which way to lean. So I changed my definition to the process of passion plus people. So
nice.
yeah, so you're still kind of bringing in that infusion of doing something that you like to do. It does not need to be your all be all end all, but bringing that to the world. So I love that you're saying all of this sort of connection to others, connection to self, and connection to passion, bringing to people. I mean, it's just unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. So true. Oh, I love that. I love your evolution there, and I love the simplicity of your definition of
Mm-hmm.
as well, Brie. And it's so true. I'm like your prior guest. I have all kinds of passions. I have so
Yes.
many. I can barely keep track of them. There's this and there's it, right? Like I see all these, gems out there, stuff I would love to pursue. Now there's only, so much time, and
Yeah.
you know, and there's a few that really stand out. But yeah, just like sometimes I want to like recently I'm exploring pickleball, which I know is the big thing right now.
It is a
It's
big
really
thing.
fun. It's really fun. Is that my end all be all passion? No, I'm not going to probably compete. I don't think so.
Though, if we're cheering you on if you decide to.
Oh, thanks, Bree.
Yeah,
You're in my court. Forgive
absolutely.
the pun.
Absolutely. Oh man, but okay, so I got to know how you really came to these uh three plus
Thank
one
you.
uh pieces.
So
how did you arrive at these?
so here's what happened. I assumed when I was first writing my book that I would dedicate one chapter per individual that I interviewed and really, highlight one person at a time. But as I started to do it that way, I kept noticing, wait a minute, Jen says the same thing as Tracy, as the same thing as Henry. So it was like, no, that this is not going to work because there's not everything, but so many of the things are the same. So things like gratitude and self-care
Mm-hmm.
and honoring who you are, all those are in here. Taking risks, all those are chapters. Um, and then certain things just kept arising as I sat with the material, and all those other things are important. Nutrition and moving the body, super important to lay the foundation for happiness. So we're not creating inflammation that our body then is drained by fighting, right? So that's really important. But is that the top thing that every single person said? No, no.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone talked about relationships. Everyone talked in their own way. Now, very few, some, but very few of my people talked about mindfulness per se. They didn't use that term, but in their own way, they all described the same kinds of experiences. Every single one. I'm like, okay, that one has to be in there.
It's got to, yeah.
Every single one of them talked about having passions and just they lit up as they talked about whether, again, it was making art from found pieces, that's Jen, or Warren, who is just an avid bicyclist, um, to Mia, who makes pies for friends and
Oh.
chooses the ingredients specifically to that person and wraps them. Well, first of all, she bakes them in the right color. What's it called? Tin or whatever whatever you put pies in. Ceramic pots. I don't know what those things are called.
I'm not the person to ask. Shamefully, my my
And then
skills are
everyone
not there.
talked in some way about being in service. and
Uh-huh.
and so these are the things that seem just absolutely universal. So that's how I can I say too, it resonated so deeply within me,
Yeah.
that too, like it wasn't just everyone else is saying this. It's like, oh yeah, that just feels true again in my, see, I go like this, I point at my body,
Mm-hmm.
in my heart, in my soul, in my gut. It felt like, oh, that's right, that's truth, that's the gem of wisdom. And I wanted to share that again. So when we come to my passion, it's like, oh, this is something that could help people. I want to share this. I want to remind people because we're in a culture that is quite lonely, and there's so much depression and anxiety in our culture,
Mm-hmm.
even before the pandemic,
Right.
which has just exacerbated all this. Um, and there are things that we can do to feel better. I want to get this word out there. That's so my passion
Yes.
enters in as well.
I'm just, I'm listening, and I'm hearing what I think is so cool because it's all about connection. It's connection
Mm-hmm.
to others, connection to self, and then
Mm-hmm.
connection between the two,
Yes.
connection between self and other. And I think, that
Yes.
just the, I guess, the importance and the power of relationships in our life.
Yes.
And, it is clearly one of the foundational pieces of happiness, or
Yes.
of feeling happy. Is it a feeling or a state of being, or I don't know, maybe you came through that, but just happiness in general is so much based on how we connect.
Exactly.
It's so powerful.
Exactly.
So
And then of
powerful.
healing as well. You and I
Yeah.
know this as healers. It all arises from the relationship, from the connection, from that magic alchemy that happens from coming together in this sacred, I would call it a sacred way, right?
Yeah.
We put our minds and our hearts and our souls together, and there's some faith and there's some trust mixed into the recipe here. And we lean
Sure,
in
sure is.
and we really show up.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can let our egos kind of melt away as much as possible, then something new emerges, right? That it's, and it isn't me. It's not just me. It's something about this field that occurs, and it's not just in a healing relationship either, right? This can
Right.
be sitting across from your spouse, I don't know, at the breakfast table, talking about the article about making bread. I don't know, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that there's a
Yeah. It doesn't.
connection.
Right.
And so it doesn't just have to be these big highfalutin things. It can be every day, or a cashier say, this is what Mia talks about in the book, that she's careful when buying a hot dog at the hot dog stand, to connect with the vendor, to say, hey, how's your day going, and to listen. And again, it can be 5-10 seconds, but that there's a meaningful moment, there's a little spark,
Yes.
and both parties walk away feeling better.
It's so interesting. It's like how we can both fill someone else's cup and fill our cup at the same time through that
Exactly.
connection. You know,
Exactly.
it's not just pouring your cup into the other, which can be, for literally and metaphorically draining.
Yes.
It is being able to have that fulfillment in service to or in connection to others, and also feel that given right back to you.
Yes. Yes.
Such
Plenty of love to go around. I'll never forget
yes.
when my son was very young, and the dog does this too, but but my son, I might, pay a little attention to another child in his presence, and Elliot would come, right up in between us.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah.
don't forget about me. The dog does that too. I lean down to pet another dog, and Rex is like, oh, right at me, I'm number one, don't forget me.
Don't forget
And
me.
it
Yeah.
would come to me, and sometimes I would even say aloud to Elliot, there's enough love. There's plenty of love to go around, right? It's not, it's like infinite instead of finite.
Yes. Yeah. There's no cap on the
No.
love that we can that we can pour out. For sure, it is infinite. Um, I want to know a little bit more about initially when you were looking for the happiest people you know.
Mm-hmm.
What was that vetting process? Because was it the way that they appeared, or based on what they have, like the actions that they were doing, or the persona it seemed like they had, or what was that or I know they were close to you, but I'm just so curious as to, before you found out all of this information really about the connections and the relationships, what was your process to finding it?
Yeah. Well, and to clarify, I wasn't clear earlier. They weren't necessary. Some of them were close to me. Some of them were just acquaintances, but
Okay.
I wanted it to be just one degree of separation. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even want it to be, oh, you should talk to so and so who I never met before.
Mm-hmm. And that, I can imagine, makes sense to what you're about to say, kind of going with my question, how did you vet them? You didn't want it
Yes.
to be more than one degree of separation, so that there was some level of understanding maybe.
Well, the fascinating thing was sometimes I was wrong.
Hey,
Really,
science, right?
on
That's
both sides. So I'll give a couple of examples. Somebody I was in a play with, Michael, appeared to me super happy
mm-hmm.
because she was engaged. I saw her, lighting up when she would see people and really having great conversations. She seemed super happy to me, and actually, she wasn't so happy right then. She's like, I'm actually kind of depressed, and but you should talk to Jen. So that's how I found Jen. Who Jen did not appear terribly happy to me. Jen appeared quieter,
Huh.
off to themselves. Um, but Jen was terribly happy. I just didn't know Jen well
Okay,
enough.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
on the other side, um, I'm not gonna be super specific on this one to
Understand.
yeah, to
Totally
protect
fine.
any privacy. But there's an in-law. I'll go that far. There was an in-law who did not end up being in my book, but who I assumed was not very happy, because what I observed was a lot of complaining, a lot of complaining. Just the service wasn't good at the restaurant, or this isn't right. This is the plumber didn't do the job right. That's all I heard. So I just thought, oh, that person doesn't appear very happy. And then one day, the person said to me, I am so happy. And I'm like, and so I'm like, what? I mean, I think I was, I wasn't like super shy. I think I held myself back, but like internally, I'm like, what, you? I'm like,
yeah, like
tell
hold
me
on a
more.
second.
What? And the person couldn't explain it very well, but as I looked back later, the person was the most free they had ever been in their whole life. They were able to make a lot of choices on their own for the first time in their life. And I'm like, oh, I can see that. Yeah, this is probably the happiest that person has ever been. So who am I to judge, right? So don't judge a book by its cover, though we do.
We do, yes.
This was really humbling for me, that I could be so wrong. And it's not the only time on either side, but those are just two examples. But generally, to answer the question, how did I find people? I just observed, I just noticed smiling, engagement. It's See, here's the thing. Happiness, even for me now, this is I'm a few years out. Happiness is very hard to explain. It's kind of like art, right? Can anyone really, with their words, describe art? No, I can show you what it is. I know what it is when I see it. I know happiness when it's more a feeling, an experience that defies words. And actually, do you happen to know Gretchen Rubin, the author?
I have heard the name, but I can't say I could speak to her work.
I love her. I haven't read all of her work, but The Happiness Project is her first and most famous.
Okay.
And she's written a bunch of books since then. Uh, in some of her writings, somewhere she talks about this very question: how do you define happiness? And she kind of gave up, because even in the field, there's no agreed upon definition of happiness. There's different ones. She said it's enough to know when I feel happy, and it's enough to because it seems to be a human drive to want to be happier. And she basically said that's enough. That's
I like that.
enough.
Yes. Yeah. That
to
just
strive, that there's something about working toward being happier that is, anything can be overused, I suppose, but if in moderation, to be working towards something can be a very positive force in our lives.
yes, absolutely. I think that's a beautiful way to put it too. Just the strive to want to be happier. It shows that there is engagement in the process. That wanting peace is enough, as she said, to push yourself into the next level, or ease yourself into the next level. But I think you did a great job of answering that question, and I wanted to circle back because I'm just listening to you sort of give these examples, and why the question popped into my head was because I was like, okay, but I know that there's people who are definitely kind of putting on the show and putting on the act, which is why I was wondering, pretending to be happier than they are, especially in the day and age that we're in. We see all the positive stuff online and none of the negative or none of the downside. We sort of see this one tunnel of who people choose to show that they are. But what I think is so unique is that you also said, it was a process for you, and you can't really describe it, but you started, it was actually the connection, or part of it, the connection between you and the person, that you could just feel it, that way that you can't describe art. It was almost like you were feeling that connection with individuals, trying to figure out if they were happy or not. in order to sort of like push into those next steps. So I just think it's interesting that like you were using connection before you even realized that connection was necessarily part of
Oh my gosh,
happiness.
you're right, Bree. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
It took me a minute to try to really, spit it out. But yes, you
Oh,
were
you did great.
using the connection to find out that it was in fact connection.
Yes. And if we circle back then to the body, right? So that was a felt sense that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And we touched on this earlier, kind of the somatic stuff. And I just think it's so important because, again, happier people are more in tune. Now, this is not in my book. This I've kind of realized since. Happier people are way more in tune with those internal sensation. Less happy people, right? They kind of live from here, from the chin up, and they don't drop down as much, like because we can get trained because of trauma,
Right.
and even just conditioning in our culture to ignore the body and stay up in the head.
Right.
And
Wow.
that's at our
Yes.
peril, boy.
Oh my gosh, that is so, so true. I've never really heard it put that way, too, that people are sort of living above the shoulders or from the chin up or, and not really sinking into their body and who they fully are. But what a powerful way to describe that.
Thanks.
Absolutely. That, I mean, so, so interesting. And for sure, my listeners know I've talked about this sort of training or, the pushing down of emotions too, sort of the compounding of pushing things back. And then you just kind of keep layering.
Because we learned it wasn't safe. That's the only reason we do that. Or we didn't learn how to do,
right.
What to do with our feelings.
Right. Right.
But these are skills that can all be learned.
Right. Well, we learned them to begin with, right? Conditioned behavior is learned. We just don't remember learning it because we were so young, when we were figuring out our coping skills that we kind of put it into the back of our heads. But you're right. It is all behavior that we can learn and practice and, live a more fulfilled life from, live a happier life from, sort of like feel and embody what that really means.
Well, then that's how I can wake up to my passions, right? Because I'm going to feel it in my body. If it's something that draws me, it's a felt sense inside.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, I am so engaged in this conversation. I feel like I could go for several more hours. We are winding down here to our last 10 minutes or so. So there's a couple things I like to do at the end of the show. First, we're gonna do a little bit of a rapid fire round, question and answer, and then I'm gonna sort of leave you the floor to say whatever your final piece might be to listeners, any final takeaways, and then let everyone know where they can find you.
Sounds good. Will do.
All right. Awesome. So we for sure have gone through today's conversation discussing the 3 pillars that I like to gauge our conversation around, which are development, decision-making, and dedication to purpose. I love that we really pushed into the passion piece today of purpose and sort of leaning into that and understanding that's infusion in happiness. I think that we definitely covered all 3 of these pieces in both your story and in what you're doing now. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
You're welcome. A pleasure.
Of course. So with those 3 pillars in mind, that's what this rapid fire round will be. Super simple. So nothing to be concerned about. But the first question is on development. Currently in this very moment, are you working more on personal development or professional development?
Personal.
Right away. Awesome.
I'm getting up there, right? Retirement is on the horizon.
It's on the horizon. You see it. You see it there. Okay. The next one is on decision making. When you, in the process of decision making, do you lean more into choice or guiding voice? Choice being numbers and analytics. You make the definitive choice, or guiding voice being spirituality, gut feeling, intuition, or something else of the sort.
This is not going to come as a surprise to you, given what we talked about. Guiding voice all the way. I mean, I'm not going to exclude all that other good rational stuff. I'm going to consider that, but yeah, it's the insides.
For sure. I sometimes I will tell guests like I think I know what you're gonna say based on the conversation. I felt pretty strong with this one too.
Yeah, of course you did.
Yeah. Okay, the last one is a dedication to purpose. And in this case, we can also, dedication to passion as well, I think is really fitting based on our conversation. Is this a singular moment in time or is this a daily practice?
Absolutely daily practice.
Daily
Daily
practice.
practice.
Daily
Yeah.
practice. I hear that more often, that it's a daily practice for sure.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that is the end of our rapid fire round. Thank you for
Okay.
playing along. Quick and painless. All right, Tom, you have the next few minutes. Please leave our listeners with whatever takeaways you think might be most valuable to leave them with, and then we'll let everyone know where they can find you.
So I would want to leave folks. I hope they might have been inspired to connect more deeply with other people. I would start there to do things like we touched on, engage with the people at the checkout stand at the grocery store, for instance, even just momentarily, and to make the most of all your relationships and to enhance them by really showing up, really being there, and maybe slowly taking a few more risks to be more real and true and even vulnerable, and notice how that feels in your body.
So important. So important. Thank you so much for that. Truly, you brought so much value to today's episode. I cannot wait to hear listener feedback because I know that you are helping make those changes in people's lives that might be necessary and they just needed to hear it from someone else. So thank you. Tom, let's give everyone the breakdown. Where can they find you? Where can they get your book? And also everything that he says, I'll make sure to put in my show notes as well as all my social media when we drop the episode.
Great, thanks. So fullheartliving.com, HEART, fullheartliving.com. There are links to where you can buy the book. And also I've got this product, Full Heart Living Conversation Sparks. So this is kind of in a box, how to connect more deeply with yourself or other people. So they're conversation prompts or journal writing prompts. So so that people can indeed connect more deeply with themselves, with others, and their passions. All the prompts are based on chapters in the book.
So awesome. You can go. Will you go ahead and hold up the book again one more time too? I just want to look at the cover as well. I love it. I love it. I love everything about it. Amazing.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, Tom, thank you so much. Truly, it has been a pleasure. And I look forward to reading your book and getting these cards as well. What a great idea to sort of take those takeaways and put them into sort of a deliverable form, a bite-sized form. So awesome. I think that would they work with kids and adults? Like if I wanted to use those cards with my students, would it work or would it be more adult focused?
I have been shocked that even my 6-year-old great nephew loves them. He has a special name for them, which I can't remember what I got to ask Carter what his name for my game is. It's really cute. But yeah, so they were not designed for youngsters, but I've played it with even late teenagers.
Okay.
And oh my gosh, the conversation that evolved was just stunning.
That's really what I'm thinking of is, the conversation that we just had. It's so powerful and so important, and I think that it needs to be started way earlier than maybe you or I had it, that's why I'm just thinking, the power of the conversation and connection. I would love to work with my my students and such on stuff like that. But again, Tom Glaser, everyone, author of Full Heart Living, doing amazing things. Thank you again. And as I end all of my podcast episodes, until next time, let this be the moment.